Hello.
Hello.
How's it going? Can everyone hear okay? Awesome. Too loud or no? Good. All righty. What's up, Luke? How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Fine, thank you. You are on. I'm going to go ahead and full screen this. And
okay. Give me a sec. I'm just connecting up a mic and headphones so we get better audio.
You trying to show me up?
I didn't know that was the case, but okay.
No, we just have the speaker, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I have a little mic that'll make audio better, and when I put on headphones, it should sound nicer too.
Nice.
Let me do that. How is everybody? Good. Looks like some comfortable seating over there. Hopefully you're not going to be stuck in it too long. Okay. Say okay. Can everybody hear me all right? Yes? Okay. I'm going to actually move to a screen sharing mode here. So give me a second. By the way, I am in my garage. My kids are in the bed, and I think the last thing they want to hear is web design talk as they're trying to fall asleep. So with that said, I am going to move us over to a screen sharing mode. Okay, here we go. Okay, does everybody see my nasty desktop? Yes? No? Yes. Okay, you guys got to speak up over there. It's hard to tell what's going on. All I see is a bunch of uncomfortable chairs and some rafters. So. Okay. That's good news. Let's see here. Open up, please. So, Tony asked me to talk to you guys a little bit about this topic called Mobile First, as a book I wrote on the topic just came out recently. So I have a pretty large presentation around it, but since this is sort of an informal thing, I'm going to say you guys can go ahead and stop me, ask me to break in anytime you want, but I will continue unless I hear otherwise. Sound fair? Yes. Okay. So, mobile first, what are we talking about here? It's actually a pretty basic idea, and the idea is that when we start doing things for the internet, we should start thinking about the mobile experience as sort of a first-class citizen, if not the priority order citizen. And the reason this is kind of a different idea is for all the years we've been doing the web, 20-something years now, I guess 20 exactly years, it's always been desktop first, right? Kind of the large screen environment, whether it's 800 by 600 or whether it's now this theoretical 1024 by 768 space we work with, that's always been order one. But things have changed so much that I think this is kind of a backwards way of going about it right now, and I want to literally talk about why. Before I do that, I want you to know that I'm not totally nuts for thinking this way. This is the chairman of Google, Eric Schmidt, who recommends doing mobile first, and he claims Google has been a mobile first company for a number of years now, in that all the product teams build mobile products before they build desktop. This is Kate Aronowitz, who heads up design and front-end development at Facebook. Same story. Kevin Lynch, CTO over Adobe. They've realized Flash might not be their long-term bet, but Kevin actually makes the point this is a bigger deal than when the PC came around. And even in industries like finance, I frequently get asked, okay, yeah, mobile first might make sense for, consumer web stuff, but I work in blank, 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 and our customers, da, da, da. So here's a finance company, essentially a new kind of bank, or a bank, literally, and they are building the mobile application first to really strip things down to their essentials. So it's not just sort of consumer applications, the Googles, the Facebooks of the world. People in pretty much every domain are embracing this kind of approach. Now, I don't think we should do things just because other people tell us to. So as I mentioned earlier, I really want to talk about the reasons why I think this makes a ton of sense. And it really boils down to just three things. One, there's a crazy amount of growth, which gives us a real chance to take advantage of that for creating new businesses, gathering new customers, meeting people's needs. Mobile comes with a lot of very tight constraints, and that forces us to focus down to the stuff that actually matters. And then last but totally not least, there's all kinds of new things we can do on mobile devices that allow us to rethink how we go about kind of meeting our goals and the customer's needs. So with that, let's jump into the first one. This is research from Morgan Stanley, which was written about 2 years ago. And the big thing you need to note here is that they are forecasting more mobile connected devices than people in the world, roughly in the next, 5 years or so. And that's a really big deal, right? Because all of a sudden you start living in an environment where people have multiple ways of going online. It's not just the desktop PC. There's mobile devices, there's tablets, there's set-top boxes, there's game consoles, there's all kinds of little doodads in the home connected to the internet, e-readers, things like this. And this growth in these devices is really causing tremendous growth in the amount of internet traffic these devices gather. We're talking mobile global traffic growing 26x over the next 5 years, which is about 8 times faster than the web grew. So if you remember the heydays of AOL, where the web was doubling about every 100 days, this is 8x that. Now, yes, there's more devices and more internet traffic, but is there actually any real viable opportunity in this space, right? So things that make people money on the internet tend to be the places that work shows up and you can do things. So stuff like commerce. eBay, actually, I need to update this bullet because very recently announced they're actually going to hit $5 billion in 2011. And they've revised this estimate of what their total global mobile sales will be by $1 billion, like twice during the year, which is huge. And mobile web, same story. Best Buy, users doubling every year. Social, you can kind of see some of the stats here. The one I like to call out is that Mixi, which is the largest social network in Japan, 85% of their page views are happening on mobile. 4 years ago, it was 14%. So you can really see how quickly this growth could take over and become the dominant platform for your site. And once you have 85% of page views on mobile devices, then all of a sudden mobile first starts to make a ton of sense. And then things like search, music, email, you name it, all across the board, we're seeing real businesses grow on mobile. So that's a lot of data. I don't think you have to memorize all that data. What matters most, if you take like a single data point away, is that the Morgan Stanley research I called out earlier had this really bold prediction that global smartphone sales are going to outpace global PC, as in laptop, desktop, notebook sales, somewhere around 2012. Well, this happened at the end of last year. So this pivotal moment of global smartphone sales passing personal computer shares happened about 2 years earlier. And this is really indicative of what's happening with all of these predictions in mobile now, is they're all coming true way faster than we expected. What does that mean for us? Well, as I hinted at before when I talked about some of the things going on with Mixi, this indicates a shift in usage from what used to be the personal computer, this big plastic box you blow out with an air can that sits under your desk, to the real personal computer, which is the thing that's always with you, always connected to the network. So even between 2008 and 2010 in the US, home usage of desktops and laptops dropped 20%. And the reason why Comscore estimates is because people are getting things done in their in-between hours on smartphones and tablets. You can also see this in specific services. So all web-based email sites on desktop dropped 7% at the end of 2011, but people accessing email on mobile devices jumped 36%. So you see this swing in usage again. And this data was taken at a time when smartphone penetration in the US was something like 30%. Right? So 30% only, people having these capable devices, and already you see this sort of swing. It's not just the shift in usage, though. It's also a lot of new use coming up. So Yelp, about 7% of their audience is on mobile apps, that 7% is responsible for more than a third of all their searches. Right? More than a third of all searches coming from 7% of the audience. And what this shows is that mobile opens up all these new amounts of time for people to get things done that previously were reserved for, okay, I'm home in front of the computer, or I'm at work and I have some idle time in front of the computer. Additionally, every other second somebody calls a local business on Yelp. People who use this real estate service called Zillow are using it in the neighborhoods where they want to buy a home when they're on mobile devices, which is a very different kind of opportunity for the company. People that use Facebook on mobile devices are twice as active on Facebook on a desktop than people who don't use mobile. And this is sort of the cross-channel story. You expect mobile plus desktop use to be 1 plus 1, but very often it adds up being more than that. It ends up being 1 plus 1 equals 3 or 4 sometimes. So additional use, shift in use, and if you're astute and you're paying attention to what people are doing on mobile devices, you might say, well, isn't all this sort of native applications? Aren't people using native mobile apps and driving up all this traffic? So when you're on your Nexus S smartphone on Twitter, you're using a native app. And it's true, lots of activity happens on Twitter. 40% of all tweets start there, 16% of new users start there. But the top client for Twitter is actually the mobile web experience, followed by SMS. And then the native apps follow on from there. And as a result, Twitter Hey guys, I think I lost you.
All right.
Technology. What did you last hear? Twitter? Okay. Let's try that again. Should we pick up where we left off? All right. I guess my screens are too intense to share. All right. Does it look better? Yes. Okay. Great. So, because of all this mobile web use, Twitter recently redesigned their mobile web experience.
Oh, wait.
What?
We don't see the slide deck.
Screen share.
You don't what?
We see you, not the slides.
Oh, that's odd.
We like it, but...
No, that's not good. You don't want to see me. Let's try this again. Is it sharing the screen now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, odd. Let's try that again. So now you see Twitter or mobile web?
Yeah.
Yay! Okay. So, same story on Facebook. 33% of posts sent via mobile. Top mobile clients on Facebook are, by a long shot, the mobile website. And again, these guys have spent a lot of time redesigning their mobile web experience with 2 different versions very recently. Now, what this all adds up to for mobile web is that, actually, I'll just pull up this bullet rather than explaining it. I talked about how these predictions are coming true sooner rather than later. This is another one of those, right? That basically says in about a year or 2, we're going to have more traffic off mobile devices on websites than on PCs. And hence the reason why we start thinking about this opportunity. It's coming up very, very quickly. We saw in Japan it took, less than about 4 years to go from 14% of page use to 85% of page use. And where a lot of sites are at right now is really in this, single-digit page use size on mobile. Some are much higher. Some actually it's the majority share. So Twitter, the majority share of traffic right now is off of mobile devices, 60%. With sites like Fandango, which is movie tickets, are about 40%. So they're at the cusp. So different companies are in different stages, but it's very, very clear this shift is happening. And it's happening across all kinds of sites, right? The top 50 sites only get 40% of traffic. People visit about 24 different sites on their smartphone a day, which means everybody's fair game for this. And one of the more interesting things that I think is happening is we're literally seeing a generation that is starting to use the internet on mobile devices. So in Asia and Africa, 50% of people don't use the internet on PCs, they use it on mobiles. India, about 49% infrequent desktop use. But a lot more surprising, in the UK, 22% of people. And in the US, I don't know if the stat is to be believed as it stands right now, but somewhere around 20-something% of people most often use mobile devices and never or infrequently use the desktop PC to get online. And once again, in a couple of years, the majority of traffic is coming from mobile. So this literally creates a generation that has only used mobile devices to get on the internet and the web. And I think it's very hard for us who have had 20 years of desktop web, 30 years of desktop GUI to put ourselves in the shoes of these people and understand their mental models about how to work with information, how to interact with it when they've started and only known mobile as an access point. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in Silicon Valley we call Kenya the Silicon Valley of banking, because something like 20% of GDP there happens on mobile devices. It's kind of crazy. A lot of innovation happening there. But this isn't just an opportunity to take advantage of this growth. It's also an opportunity to create an overall better product. This is Joe Hewitt. He made this app, the iPhone app for Facebook, which is arguably the most popular native mobile app, period. And his goal was to make a companion, but he pretty much became convinced it's possible to create a better version of Facebook on mobile than on the website, which is where the opportunity to really focus and prioritize stuff takes place. So this growth pattern of, we're seeing this shift in usage from what used to be the personal computer to what is. We're seeing this new activity pop up, and we're seeing the mobile web grow just as strongly as the desktop web. All that creates a chance for us to take advantage of that with our information and our services. And when we do, the constraints of mobile actually allow us to, I think, come up with better overall experiences. So I want to talk a little bit about why. But before I do that, I'm just going to open it up. Any questions on this whole growth story? Shift in use, new use, anything there you guys want to talk about?
Nope.
Okay, we'll plow ahead. So, mobile, naturally constrained. The whole point of a mobile device is that it's mobile. Therefore, it has a lot of human factors and ergonomic constraints to make it portable. It's got to fit in your hand, pocket, palm, purse. And so screen size is something that takes a hit as a result of that benefit. And we spent many years arguing over how much screen space we have on the desktop web. We generally settled on 1024 by 768, which is sort of a myth, but hey, we all live by it. When you move to a typical, again, pseudo-typical smartphone size, you've lost 80% of that screen space. That means 80% of the stuff that's on web pages has no space, has to go away, which I think is fantastic. But it's not like we fill our pages with any kind of useless clutter or information that could possibly ever be distracting or get in the way. Right? That never happens. Southwest Airlines would never do that. But when you compare Southwest Airlines' desktop experience and you look at what they do on mobile, you can see there's a bit of a difference, right? And on the mobile experience, it's just this laser focus on how the company makes money, what its purpose is to book air travel, car reservations, and what their customers want to do. Book travel, check in on their flights, check the status of their flights, manage their loyalty programs. And so starting with these constraints of mobile, you have to get rid of 80% of everything, can ultimately end up in very focused and prioritized desktop experiences, right? Rather than what we saw at the beginning here with everything in the kitchen sink on the page. Once you agree on a prioritization that works in the constraints of mobile, why change what's important? It's because you move to a different device, right? More screen space doesn't mean booking a flight is less important or checking your flight status is less important. Another example, you may be familiar with Flickr. It's a photo sharing site, but chances are you're not familiar with all of it. Over the years, Flickr has grown, and when they did their mobile web experience, they had to move from 60 plus options down to about 6. So how did they do that? Well, they had to understand what their audience does on the site and why, which is sort of design 101. What people do on Flickr is they check to see if anybody's left comments on their photos or liked them. They see what photos their contacts have uploaded, and then they kill some time with something interesting or photos nearby. And that's exactly what you get in this mobile web experience. This very prioritized, focused view of what you do on the site based on how people are actually using it. Those are two kind of top-level examples. I'll show one more nuanced example. This is the page on Expedia that tells me when my flight is leaving. This is the part of that page that actually has valuable information on it. The rest of it is essentially pixel clutter. Now, when you contrast this entire page here of information to what happens on Expedia Mobile, you can see there's this, once again, prioritization on just the important stuff. Because once again, there's frankly no room for all this other crap. Like save on hotels in Seattle, and God knows what else in here. Airlines, rules, and regulations, right? It's just, here's when you're taking off, here's when you're leaving, and move by date or by itinerary. It gets even better with Expedia because if you use their actual native app, you just open it up, and if you flip it sideways, it says, where should you be? It instantly tells you, hey, your flight's leaving in 10 minutes, get over to Terminal B now. And these two experiences could not be any more different, right? Like slugging through all of that useless clutter on the desktop to find the time your flight leaves, to literally just flipping the phone sideways and being told exactly the information you need. It's just a world of difference, and I think it comes from these tight constraints that force you to focus on use cases and important information. We've also got this constraint of network speed, so you never know when this will happen. As a result, making things fast on mobile is very important. And I'm not going to talk too much about how to actually go do that, but I just will say that if you make things fast enough for mobile devices, it will be blazing fast on the desktop. And in study after study after study, 100 millisecond delays cause companies to lose lots of money, lose lots of traffic, you name it. So if you start with mobile, go mobile first, and you make it fast enough for these really unreliable connections, anywhere and everywhere kind of connectivity, if it's fast enough for that, it's going to be super fast on the desktop, and you won't have to worry about any of these losses in sales, revenue, traffic numbers, etc., because of poor performance. And the third constraint that you get on mobile is it's a very different, as I mentioned earlier, set of ergonomic and human factors, kind of levers that you're playing with, right? With desktop machines, we're generally in a seated position, we're there for a while, the screen is big, we got consistent power, precise and accurate input through keyboards and mice, and of course the ultimate Apple accessory, the coffee mug, coming soon. And then on mobile, pretty much everything is different. The screen is small, the battery can go out, the network's inconsistent, we're using our fat fingers to navigate. And the precision really comes from all these environmental sensors on the device that know where we are, the direction we're facing, all kinds of stuff. I think the fact that these things are so portable, fit in our hands, we use our fingers to use them, they know where we are, makes them really personal, which is, again, a bit of a different factor from the desktop in your office at home. Another way we can look at how these factors influence mobile use and how that's different from the desktop is understanding where people use mobile devices. The stereotypical model is somebody on the street, businessman late for a meeting, some guy trying to find directions to a restaurant. But it actually turns out 84% of people use their smartphones at home, very often on the couch while the TV's running or in between tasks. 39% of people say they use their smartphones in the bathroom. That means 61% of people are liars. But you also see miscellaneous times, waiting in lines, at work, which is just about everywhere and anywhere. And that's a huge opportunity, right? Having the ability to reach people anywhere and everywhere and having them connected to the network anywhere and everywhere. And this is world-changing type of enablement. And I'm going to skip the slides. I don't want to try broadcasting the video. But the general idea is, across many activities throughout the day, people are able to sort of interact with the network. And there's usually things going on around them, right? So what that means is, even if you're at home and the TV's on, it's partial attention. It's not sitting at the desk for a couple hours working. right? And many times, not only is there things going on, people are in hurried situations or they're out and about. So this idea of one eyeball, one thumb is a good way to think about kind of the level of effort people will put into understanding a mobile app or a mobile website. They're not going to sit there and spend a whole bunch of time trying to figure out your nav or, pinky moving through it. They really need things that are focused. Last thing to consider around this sort of modes of use of mobile is when do people use mobile devices? This is data from a service called Read It Later, and this is when people read articles that they saved to read later. And you'll note computer users, desktop, laptops, they are asleep, they wake up, they read, they eat dinner, they read, they go to bed. iPhone users, very different graph. Same use case, right? And the important thing to note here is this is the same stuff. People are doing the exact same things. They're reading articles they save for later. You can see that iPhone users still read pretty much any time, but the spikes when compared to computer use are a lot shorter and kind of more abrupt. So read for a while, crash, read for a while, crash. So it's more short bursty behavior. Same use case again, and now we're just looking at people reading on their iPads, and what you can see is it's very much an evening sort of nighttime bed/couch device, right? And yes, I'm sure you're still reading tech articles in the bedroom, but the pattern of device use is very different from what you just saw for computers and iPhones. And this holds true across pretty much every data set I've seen. This is when people overall use of the LinkedIn social network for professional networking. This is when mobile users use it. And so my theory here is, people are at work, their job sucks. As soon as they get off work, they start searching for a new job on LinkedIn. So mobile traffic spikes. And then they pass out, go to bed, start over. This is just randomized data looking at when a device type is connected to a 3G network. And we can see immediately the laptops really represent these singular, longer, focused sessions. Smartphones, on the other hand, are like in, out, short, bursty sessions. And then tablets are, sort of in between. So here it doesn't matter exactly what people are looking at. It's just a different kind of device changing the traffic or the patterns of use. So in aggregate, I think all of these constraints really force you to focus and prioritize the design, right? Less screen space, less room for crap, speed of networks, got to make it fast enough for mobile, be fast enough for the desktop. And then modes of use, I think, force you to really deal with everyday and anywhere use cases. And so I love this quote from Dave Olson on the Mobile and Higher Ed blog, where he calls out this XKCD comment that says all the crap that's on the university homepage on the left and the things people actually want on the right. And he realized that their mobile site had only the stuff on the right, only the things people want. And I thought this was fascinating and yet made a lot of sense because, again, mobile forces you to focus, and because you got to think about people in the real world doing real things, you naturally gravitate to things that create value, right, to real world use cases like the stuff on the right. So that's why I think the constraints are another great reason for going mobile first, right? Small screen space forces you to prioritize, low bandwidth forces you to make things fast, and then these everywhere and anywhere modes of use force you to consider how real use cases apply to your content or services. Once again, since we're remote here, I'll pause and see if anybody wants to talk about some of that or if we should keep rolling.
Keep going.
Keep going? Huh? Okay, you guys are easy. Must be late over there in Phoenix, or hot. I don't know.
We'll save it for the end.
Okay. So, mobile devices have lots of capabilities that frankly leave desktops and laptops in the dust. Simple feature like flipping the device and having the accelerometer understand that it's either in landscape or portrait mode can allow you to either make sure the design still works or literally make it better. So if you flip the email app in Android to its side, it gives you a bigger area to write your email. It makes the keyboard bigger, creates a done button to the right. Could have made the design worse just by keeping the same screen, but instead it actually uses that as an opportunity to enhance the experience. And that's the general idea here, right? Use this new palette of technical capabilities to create better ways of meeting people's needs. In this case, people's needs are to compose an email, and we can use this pivoted mode, this accelerometer notified change, to adjust the layout. Instapaper does something like this, which has this tilt scrolling mode. I don't know if you guys can actually see this video very well. If not, I'll just describe it. Basically, it uses the accelerometer to let you read articles just by tilting the device forward or backward, which is kind of innovating on a really, really boring use case, which is reading online. This is a video of 360-degree motion of a device inside the web browser being used to pan a 360-degree image. So you basically just move the device in whatever direction you want, and it can move through a physical image of a space as if you were in it. You can imagine using this to check out houses before you buy them, explore travel destinations, you name it. And that's in the web browser. Touch is another capability, and I'm not even going to bother saying this. It's probably self-evident at this point. Touch is just permeating every single computing platform, right? I think Android is now at 550 devices connected per day. The iPhone numbers are going up. So during the time I'm talking here to you guys, or today, more than 1 million, if not 2 million, touch-enabled devices are making their way into consumers' hands, which is just crazy. And so what that means is people can now interact with all these sites and services we build using their fingers. Even laggards like BlackBerry and Nokia that used to really rely on indirect manipulation are now also moving to full touchscreen experiences. Because it makes sense on mobile, right? The screen has to be small so it's portable. So you might as well make the whole thing interactive. And again, I'm not going to beat that horse. So when we talk about designing for touch, we have to make sure that things are physically touchable. Since we're using our fingers, we have to rely on the dimensions of human fingers, usually measured in physical dimensions, to make sure things are big enough to tap. The average human finger pad is somewhere between 8 to 10 millimeters, and the fingertip is a little bit thinner range there. I'm sorry, the human fingertip is 8 to 10 millimeters. The finger pad is about 10 to 14 millimeters. So we want something big enough that we can hit with our fingertips, and hence all of these size guidelines. Usually what that amounts to is things looking like they're a little bigger than you'd want them to be visually. When you put this stuff on a screen and you put it in your hand, it actually feels quite right to use this size. What you mostly want to avoid is situations like this. All right, so here on the mobile web experience for Quora, the Q&A site, I try to log in and I cancel. I try to log in and I cancel. Because touch target sizes haven't been considered, nor has the distance between touch targets in this design. Now, in addition to touch target sizes, the other thing that you want to consider with touch is what are the different ways people can perform the actions they want. Excuse me. So we did an audit of this across all the platforms that supported touch, and we identified what the core gestures are, aka the ones you can rely on each platform. And that amounts to stuff you're probably familiar with now. Tapping things, double tapping things, multiple finger versions of that, dragging stuff, flicking stuff, pinching and spreading with multiple fingers as well. Press gestures, press and tap, press and drag, and then a couple of variants on rotate. Rotate is the one that actually has the most differentiation across the platforms. Everything else is pretty standard. And we rolled this up into a document called a Touch Gesture Reference Guide. You can just access it here. I won't talk too much about it. But basically what it does is it takes these touch gestures and outlines what associated actions are most common with them. And you can print these really nice cards from it now, thanks to Kimberly Fulton over in Seattle. So touch is a similar capability to this, sort of orientation detection. In that, you can use it to help people go about their business. So if you want to manage your inbox, a quick swipe on Yahoo Mail reveals these little shortcut actions. You can still get to those actions by navigating down to the email screen, but for people that figure this little gesture out, they have a much easier way of just quickly going through their mail. Drag to refresh is probably another one that's pretty popular now, But instead of hitting that button or going to a certain panel, you just kind of pull it down and the thing goes zoop and reloads real quickly. Yahoo Mail also uses a drag to reveal to give you shortcuts to functions like search and you name it, right? Now, the ultimate goal of these touch gestures, I think, is to really make interactions happen with content. So if you follow what's happening on this iPad video, if I want to move this list of photos, I just move the list of photos. I'm not touching a scroll bar or an icon. If I want to move that photo, I move that photo. If I want to see a photo, I touch the photo. Right? This way of directly interacting with content is really the underlying principle behind this idea of natural user interfaces. Get rid of visuals that are not content. Reduce the distance as much as possible between the user and content. Enable direct manipulation of objects and content. Right? Don't spend all your time double-clicking on icons, tapping on scroll bars, pushing buttons and menus, but actually touch the stuff you want to interact with. Move those lists of photos up and down by touching them. Access the photo by touching the photo. It's something that we've done a really poor job of in graphic user interfaces, and natural user interfaces, I think, give us the opportunity to remedy that. Other things for touch, spinner controls, like you can see here in Kayak. Oh, I'm sorry. Different slide. Other capabilities are things like location detection, where if we want to book a hotel, we can just use the fact that the smartphone knows where we are with a real high degree of accuracy. That I want a hotel near me, boom. No need to figure out where near me is. The phone will do it for you. And you can use this for all kinds of different use cases. So this is an app which solves the use case of if you're married or if you're running late for a meeting. And what it does is it communicates your immediate position to someone else. So you can basically send someone a glimpse of where you're at, and they will see where you're coming from, how fast you're going, and how long it'll be till you arrive. Like I said, perfect for meetings and or marriage. But the theme here of all these capabilities, and I've just gone through a few of them, is we have this stuff at our disposal to rethink how we solve people's needs. When you start with the mobile experience, right? Earlier when I talked about starting mobile first with growth, I was talking about doing it because you can take advantage of these new opportunities, this shift in use of what the personal computer is. Then when I talked about it in terms of focus and prioritization, I said starting with mobile first gets you down to core essentials, make things fast, so on and so forth. Here I'm talking about it really as a way to innovate. If you think about all the things a mobile device can do, chances are you'll come up with very different solutions for people's goals, your objectives, all sorts of things, than you would if all the things you have to work with are, pages, page refreshes, keywords, mouse and keyboards. Right? If you've got orientation detection, dual cameras, device connections, location detection, 360 degrees of motion, that stuff together really allows you to solve those use cases differently. So I want to highlight a couple examples of that just to show you how far this can go. I mentioned we can know where somebody is, kind of pinpoint them on a map. We also know the direction they're facing through a digital compass or a magnetometer. So with those two things together, we can solve this use case of, let's say, finding a nearby train station very differently than we do on the desktop. So on the desktop, if I wanted to find a train station near me, let's say in London, I'd go to the Googles, I'd type London Tube, I'd come to the site, I'd find the link, I'd click on it, I'd go to another page. They're using good amounts of white space, probably great information architecture thinking here. They're telling me which link is a PDF, how big it is, all kinds of great usability guidelines. And so I tap it, and now here's my PDF where I can go and find the train station nearest me, right? Sort of state-of-the-art on the desktop internet. And it may seem kind of quaint to us now, but when this stuff came out a couple of years ago, it was mind-blowing. Right? I can just type London Underground into a box, and up pops a map. It's amazing stuff. But on today's mobile devices, I can just literally open up an app like Nearest Tube, and it'll use my location and the direction I'm facing to overlay this tube station's nearest to me right then and there on my viewport. I can move it up, and it'll use the accelerometer to give me further details about the stations nearest me. what lines they serve, how far they are, if they have construction. And then I can shift it up even higher to see that same level of detailed information about stations further from me. So in aggregate, the whole experience kind of looks like this crazy augmented thing. Now, this may not be necessarily a better usability solution to finding a tube station near me, but wow, it's really damn different from what we saw on the desktop, right? Same use case, find a train station near me, totally different solution just because your palette of capabilities is different. And this may seem like silly augmented reality crap, but Yelp, which introduced this kind of feature of overlaying restaurants near you using augmented reality, actually saw a 40–50% sustained boost of people using it. So the interfaces are awkward, the technology's new and strange, but there's definitely something there, right? Overlaying your view of the world as you're currently experiencing it with the relevant digital information is very, very powerful stuff. Now, I cheated a little bit here because the nearest tube thing is actually a native app. It's not a mobile web experience. You can see in the native app, we have access to everything we need there. Whereas on the mobile web, we can get location, we can get device orientation. As of iOS 5, we can get access to the compass on iPhone. And in Android 4, we can get access to the video camera, not real-time display, but we can pull files from it or take pictures. So mobile web is a little behind, but it's catching up really quick. And as this iOS 5, Android 4 outline shows, those changes are happening pretty rapidly. Other things that we can do, we can actually interact with the real world. So we can point our smartphone at a barcode, find out what that product is we're looking at, see how much it costs on the web, find out what the top reviews for it are, see where it is near us, plot those things on a map, right? We don't even have to scan the barcode. We can just point our camera at a product and it'll identify what it is and tell us the same information. Google's placed these little mobile QR codes on the top 100,000 places in Google Places. And when you encounter one of these, you point your smartphone at it and it tells you the restaurant you're looking at, the average reviews, the menu, the phone number, the hour of operation. And again, essentially turning the whole world into an interactive surface by which you can extract digital information from it just by pointing a device at things. And Google Goggles, which is now integrated inside of Google Search. You can take a shot of a book, it'll find it for you. Take a picture of a wine label, it'll identify it for you. Point it at a business card. It'll use OCR to scan that text and insert it into your address book. You can point it at a work of art. It'll tell you what you're looking at. So I have a art history degree, which is now useless. You can point it at a landmark and it'll use your location and that image you capture to tell you what you're looking at. So if you have a geography degree, I'm sorry. Point it at foreign language text, it'll translate it. If you have a foreign language degree, once again, my condolences. And this is a really amazing one. This is word lens, right? You basically just point your camera at text, and not only will it translate that text, it'll display it right on the view of the world. So the sign actually instantly becomes translated right there on that viewport. Other examples of using video input, image input, this is Card IO. You point your camera phone at a credit card, it scans it, and you can essentially take a payment from somebody. Point your camera phone at a check, and you can deposit it at 9 banks in the US and counting. Right? No more need to go to the ATM. Take a snapshot of your check, money's deposited, you're done. And this is an awesome one. This is Recognizer. You point that image input at somebody that uses facial recognition technology to identify them and call up their online profiles on the internet, through which you can then get information on them. This was created by a company called Polar Rose. And Polar Rose was bought by Apple about 1.5 years ago. So I suspect some of these facial recognition technologies are going to make their way into iOS at some point. Now, Nokia likes to label this form of interacting with the world through the camera port of your smartphone as point found. When you see people pointing their phones at stuff like this, it's really more like a nerd found, right? Because frankly, you look like a big dork pointing your smartphone at stuff. Luckily, there's hope. So digital identity codes like RFID tags, which are little antennas that broadcast out a digital barcode. All you have to do is put a device that can read one of these things near it, and it can start to display a cartoon from it. Put it near the hippo, plays a video of the hippo. Put it near the car, plays a video of the car. Right, so you can really quickly see how you can move from these awkward interactions to just things that are based on proximity of what's near you, which is pretty amazing. And you can use that for things like checking in. You know, if anybody's ever tried to do check-ins, much easier when all you have to do is sort of walk into a place to use RFID to check in, rather than forcing you to call up a screen, locate where you are, tap check-in, and go through that whole dance. So now I've touched on a couple of these capabilities, right? Device positioning, 360 degrees of motion, location detection, multi-touch, orientation, video and image. But I didn't really talk about audio. I didn't talk about device connections. I didn't talk about proximity or ambient light. You name it, all these things are available to you. And once again, starting on mobile allows you to really think, how can I use this to help people find the nearest train station, to help people take credit card payments, to help people, you know, check into places, whatever your use case is, to help people deposit checks, whatever it is. This is the set of stuff that you have available to you. So in aggregate, I think those three things really add up to a pretty powerful case for, again, sort of making the desktop experience secondary. I mean, it's very likely to become primary from a usage perspective. That in of itself should kind of prioritize it as a first class citizen in terms of your design and development. That's the growth story. And if you don't, you know, somebody else will. Feels like every day now in the news you hear about some new company that's really thinking mobile first, that's taken over a space, like Instagram and photos versus Flickr. Or, you know, people are arguing Foursquare as a mobile first kind of social network, has a leg up on Facebook and location. And Twitter as a mobile first communication platform has a leg up on all these other things. So that's the growth story. Constraints, again, you know, screen size, performance of the network, the ability for people to use these things anywhere and everywhere really force you to focus on what matters. And we just talked about all the innovative ways you can use these device capabilities to rethink common use cases. And I should emphasize, you know, that capabilities discussion isn't about technology for technology's sake. It's more, this is the technology we have available to us. How can we use it for the things that people actually want to do, right? So once again, 1, 2, 3, pretty good story around mobile first. I thought it was a good enough story that I wrote a little bit of a book about it, which came out not too long ago. So if you're interested in more, check that out. Or you can find me on Twitter and the web. And that's all I got for you guys on this one today.
Hey, Luke, do you have a couple minutes for some questions, maybe? You there?
Hello. Yeah, I'm back.
Do you have a couple minutes for maybe some questions?
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll start it off really quickly. So we all know how bad the browser wars were with IE, the various versions of IE, the different browsers that have come out since then, and how is that going to, or how does that relate to the mobile device wars, and which one is worse at this point?
I think mobile is way worse because it's essentially, in addition to dealing with different browsers, you're dealing with different device capabilities too, right? So you have different viewport sizes, you have different ways of people interacting with input capabilities on those devices. You can't just count on mouse keyboard everywhere, right? And you can't assume 1024 by 768 is going to work. You have a lot more variables to work with, in addition to the fact that there's actually more web browsers out there. and it feels like there's more web browsers being announced almost every day. I think the most recent one was Amazon's Kindle Silk browser, right? And if you look at how many tablets and e-readers they're selling, that is going to be a pretty credible browser, I think, relatively soon. So it's worse.
So, Luke, I'm kind of interested on your approach from going mobile first. And we're an agency, or at least I work for an agency. And when you approach a client about going mobile first, how do you make that leap to deal with those devices and kind of convince them that, we do mobile web or we do a native app?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of data that really supports mobile is important, right? And frankly, like, if they don't believe you now, they'll come asking you for it in a year or two anyway. So you can almost just recommend it, and if they say no, then a year or two later you can be like, told you so, go screw yourself. I don't recommend necessarily doing that, but it is probably what is going to happen. The second thing about app versus mobile web, there's a number of reasons why thinking about mobile web is sort of a first order of business for doing things on mobile devices. Like just take a look at example of Facebook. 50% of their mobile traffic comes from the website they have, and 50% of it comes from all the native apps they have. Now these guys have the #1 native app on the iPhone, on Android, on BlackBerry, on Windows Phone, right? And they have like 2 other ones. They have seven separate platforms that they have built a native app on, where they are hands down #1 in each platform, and all those native apps together equal the amount of traffic they get from one development platform on mobile web. So I mean, that paints a pretty compelling story from a business perspective and from a reach your audience perspective. What it doesn't necessarily give you is the richness that native applications can provide right now. Because frankly, the price you pay for universal reach and like single deployment and development is the fact that you can't do everything. You can't get close to the committal, you can't run background processes, you can't monetize through the app store. So if any of those core only available native functions are really important to you, then you may need a native app in addition to some mobile web presence. But the mobile web presence, I think, is just a given, because if anybody sends an email link to your site, if anybody sends a link to your site through email, through Twitter, through Facebook, through IM, and somebody uses that or accesses their email or their Twitter on a mobile device, which they do, that link is going to a web browser. It's not opening a native app.
So, okay, one more quick one. Responsive web design. What do you even think of it?
I think it is great at adapting layouts to various viewports. I think there's a lot of unsolved challenges once you actually get in to doing it that, frankly, most of the time you need a server-side solution to address. I also think a lot of people who are adamant about responsive web design are adamantly against any kind of user agent detection and device detection. Which is where you need to make server-side solutions work. But I personally haven't seen a fully robust solution that really does a decent amount of mobile optimization without some component on the server. So I personally lean towards, hey, it's great to do responsive web design to adapt your layout, but you may still need some level of adaptation on the server to really take advantage of what each device can do and to kind of optimize things for it.
All right, I'll ask another question since everyone else is scared. Right now,
scared, eh? I'm just the like head on a monitor. What are you scared
of? Right now, what is the most popular mobile browser in the world? Last I heard, it was Symbian, and I don't know if that was a few years ago. I don't know if that has changed or not.
The person whose site to look at the most for this is PPK's. He does this mobile browser report, which I will just look up right now for you to see what what his most recent post is. The thing that's hard about this is a lot of our analytics packages rely on JavaScript, which doesn't necessarily give us direct, doesn't really paint the full picture of what's going on across devices that don't have decent JavaScript support, right? And as a result of that, I don't think anybody has a full story outside their server logs. So the server that you can actually get is, the best data you can actually get is off of server logs, and frankly, I would love to see somebody like Facebook come out and put their data out there, because I think that'll give you a really robust story of what the top browsers are. Now, there's also a very big difference between what is, how should I put this? There's also a very big difference between, visits from browsers and actual activity and volume from browsers. So hands down, the browser that is most, right, I just pulled up that data. So right now, according to PPK, in October of 2011, Safari is #1 globally. Opera is second, Android, Nokia, BlackBerry, UC, Netfront, Dolphin, everything else falls down to 1%. So it looks like both in terms of activity and in terms of volume, Safari WebKit is really top dog right now. And it's a little bit shocking when you consider the fact that Android has such a dominant hold in terms of market share of the OS, yet Safari, with a much smaller market share of the operating system, actually holds a dominant browser and internet activity position. The data that I've seen is that at the beginning of 2010, one iPhone user was responsible for 4 times as much traffic as an Android user. But by the end of 2010, one iPhone user was only about 1.75, so about twice as much as an average Android user. So things are changing, but there's still a pretty big discrepancy.
What else?
Hi, Luke. Do you have any data breaking down how many people use Wi-Fi as opposed to a cell phone signal on a mobile device?
No, I do not. I think it's actually a hard thing to get. I would guess the only people that have that is the carriers, and I don't think they're sharing.
Yeah, I feel there's a big misconception that most mobile users use the mobile web specifically on a 3G signal, whereas a lot of people just sit on their couch browsing while they watch TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, 84% of people use their smartphones at home. I don't think it's a question of, like, where is the majority of use. I think it's the fact that all that use is possible, right? So rather than trying to make assumptions about what people's network connections are, just make the thing fast as hell, and then you don't have to worry about it. And if you sort of say, oh no, people are only on Wi-Fi, so we can use these giant images. Well, in the cases where even the people who mostly are on Wi-Fi happen to be on 3G, you're not exactly doing right by them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just taking into account that they could be anywhere is probably the best way to go, as opposed to assuming one or the other. So I wouldn't assume it's mostly Wi-Fi or assume it's mostly 3G. I would just say, hey, it could be either one, so let's act accordingly.
Cool, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, Luke, thank you very much for your time. That was awesome.
Thanks.
And if anyone doesn't have Mobile First, I just got through it, and I would highly recommend reading it. It's an awesome book. Thanks for putting that out, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yay. Now hopefully the video recording worked.
Thanks for hooking that up.